Today you are going to learn something epic, and I'm really excited to show you. In this video, you will master making the one true sourdough starter to rule them all. You will have a sourdough starter with unseen power and level of activity. Now this video is going to be super controversial, as it is a lot different from what other bakers are typically doing. But I think this method, which I'm going to show you, is much easier. Now, to put my method to the test, I'm going to make one sourdough starter using the default method on the left and one using my method on the right. You will be surprised how easy it is. Even if you're a seasoned sourdough baker, there's some cool new lessons for you. Now, making a sourdough starter is super easy. You want to use a flour, ideally whole wheat flour. That really works best, because here on the brand, that's where we have wild yeast and wild bacteria everywhere. And now what we want to do is we want to cultivate that wild yeast and bacteria. We need to get it into an environment where it can just replicate itself. And that's going to be our sourdough starter. We will be always using a little bit of that sourdough starter to bake our actual sourdough bread. So the more wild yeast and the more bacteria you start with, the faster the process is going to be. You could also be using bread flour or all-purpose flour, but then it's going to be a little bit slower. Furthermore, the yeast and the bacteria, they need some of the elements which are inside of the bran. So regardless, you always want to be mixing a little bit of whole wheat. That just makes a more active starter. And you see those nice bubbles there? That's a sign of a great starter. Normally, a sourdough starter is always consisting of 1 part of flour and 1 part of water. So you always have equal parts. Now, my starter these days, I like to have a different ratio. I use 1 part of flour and 2 parts of water. And why is that gonna make you a faster sourdough starter? Because the water acts like a highway. With less water, the yeast and bacteria can't move around as freely. With more water, your yeast and bacteria can move everywhere around. It can start to digest the flour. So this is a great way to make your sourdough starter more active. Well, I actually never tried myself, so I figured I'd make this video and show you. The science behind it makes sense. So why does this actually work? Why can you make a sourdough starter? You have that flour here and there's a lot of starch inside. The moment your flour is getting into contact with water, the germination process pretty much starts of your flour. That would happen when the seed is in contact with water. That starts a couple of reactions. There's one enzyme inside of the flour called amylase, I guess in English. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Let me hold you for a second. Now, you are all awesome because on a previous video you commented and you gave me so many tips. So let me try pronouncing this one more time. Amylase and protease. Did Gryffindor just earn 100 points? Anyways, thank you and let's go back to the video. And that breaks down your starch into easily digestible sugars. This is what your germ needs, but this is also what your sourdough is feeding on. So whenever you add water to your flour mixture, that gets going quite a couple of chemical reactions in the background. So enough talking, I'm gonna be adding the water now. Here 100 grams and here I'm using 200 grams. I'm using quite a lot of flour. You could also start with 50 grams of flour or less, but in this case the math is gonna be a little bit simpler for me. Plus I have more wild yeast and more bacteria to begin with. So that's about the only tool you want. You wanna have a scale. And mind-blowing, isn't it? 100 milliliters of water equals 100 grams of water. Wow. Side note, cultivating my sourdough starter might be a little bit simpler for me, because here I have wild yeast spores everywhere already from my existing starter. Random nerd knowledge incoming. That's also why historically, beer brewers had much better and much faster results when their brewery was close to a bakery. They would have yeast pollution through the air, allowing them to ferment their beer faster. Cool, isn't it? Or am I the only one that gets excited about random stuff like this? So chances are it might just take a day or 2 days longer for you. Anyways, let's start with the conventional one.
2 hours later.
So that was a bit of stirring work, and that's why I also like this method. Here it's so much simpler because we just have much more water. Oh, and by the way, stirring also helps with making the sourdough starter faster because you'll be adding more oxygen to the mixture, and that's what the lactic bacteria needs. Yeah, and that's how you pretty much make your sourdough starter. That's all about it. I'm gonna be covering this with those lids. It's not airtight. Because we also have some wild yeast roaming around in the air everywhere. There's wild yeast on your skin as well. And we want that to go inside. So don't close it airtight. What we're gonna do tomorrow is we're gonna take a little bit of that mixture, of each mixture, and put that in a new jar. And nope, let me pause right here because I have a much cooler plan laid out. 15 minutes later, after saying this, I thought, okay, why are we actually doing this? Let's make it simpler. Let's make a spontaneously fermented sourdough bread. So, we're not gonna do any additional feedings. The only literal time invest was 3 minutes for this sourdough starter. No feedings in between, just being lazy afterwards. And let's see if this plan is going to work or epically fail. When are we done? Some people rely on the size increase, but that's not very reliable. You need to use your nose a little bit. I got myself some apple vinegar. Try to smell this. This should be around the same smell that your sourdough starter has. Don't worry, over time it's gonna start a little bit gross. That's really nothing to worry. The only bad thing that could happen is that you catch some mold on here. Then it might be that you have too many mold spores in the flour that you have been using. But normally the yeast and bacteria is gonna find every foreign microorganism. And now, being the bread nerd that I am, I do have a pH meter. The yeast creates CO2 and the lactic bacteria, which we are cultivating, is creating acid, lactic acid and acetic acid. And with a pH meter, we can measure how much that is. So right now the pH is at around 6.2. Here we have less water, so the pH might be a little bit different. Interesting, yes. So the moment you see this reaching a pH of around, my ripe starter, 3.7 or something like that, then you know that your starter is ready. But please don't worry, you don't have to get a pH meter. You can also just use your nose. You will really smell it. Yeah, this smells a lot like the vinegar. Anyways, let me cover this up. See you tomorrow.
The next day.
So it's been a little bit more than 24 hours and I can see already some bubbles. That's exactly what we want. And now let's test which of those two methods has fermented faster so far. I've just been giving both of them a good stir before measuring the pH again to see how active they are. And since we have the lactic acid, the pH is going to be a very reliable way to see who is faster. I'm so excited to test this. First, the regular conventional sourdough starter. And look at that, the pH has lowered, but it's still not on the same level as the real sourdough starter. And now let's test this mixture. That's amazing. It started at a higher pH and now it's at a lower pH. So this is actually faster. And one more time, the other starter, I didn't feed it since yesterday. And just look at how low the pH is now. Very, very low. And now here is where I will be going a different route. Normally you would now take a little bit of this and mix that again with flour and water, typically equal parts. So 1 part of this, 1 part of flour, 1 part of water. But now why would I want to be doing that? You only have to do that because after some time you no longer have food left for your yeast and bacteria. This is the case here. So you see, the pH is so much lower on this mixture. There's still plenty of food available. So why would I want to refeed this now? It doesn't make any sense. The only reason could be, okay, I want to introduce more flour, so more yeast organisms, more bacterial organisms. But at the same time, there's already plenty in there, as we just saw. So all I'm gonna be doing now is, I'm just gonna let that sit and wait for a little bit longer. The only thing we have to be careful about is that there might be some sort of mold development. Mold likes humid environments. But now, the bacteria and yeast, they are really trying to survive. They're trying to take over that sourdough starter. They want to turn that into their home. And hopefully, they are going to win this war. Hopefully, they will take over and then they will block any other external pathogens. In general, a pH below 4.2 is a hostile environment. However, the yeast and bacterial organisms have managed to survive an environment like that. But of course, the more acidic it becomes, the harder it is for them as well. Let me cover that and let's have another look tomorrow.
And in the morning again, look at what happened. Those are some bubbles. Our sourdough is coming to life. And I see even some bubbles rising here in the liquid from the bottom to the top. Those are all signs to look out for when it comes to sourdough.
It definitely smells like it has fermented already. Not like a typical sourdough yet. It isn't so vinegary. Same thing here. There's some bubbles, but it also doesn't smell so vinegary yet. So I'm curious to test the pH. So, liquid starter, what's your pH? Look at this. This is ready. It's at 3.85. This is so ready. I can't believe how fast this is. Oh, but that's tricky. Because of the lots and lots of liquid, I really wouldn't have guessed that. It just doesn't smell like the other starter. Super interesting. But 3.84 in such a short period of time. This starter is so ready. This is the readiest ready starter. So I can use that to make bread. And I should actually be setting up the dough now. But it's already late, so I'm gonna do that first thing tomorrow. This is amazing. And now the other one. And wow, we are also already at a pH of 4-ish. But a pH of 3.8 is even so much more sour than a pH of 4. So just looking at the fermentation speed, I think it's safe to say that this method won. So yeah, that's it pretty much how you make your own starter in a super fast way. In just 3 to 4 days, you can get a starter like this. And now I want to do something crazy. I want to show you how we can use that to bake our first bread.
Good morning, or we say in Germany, moin. Well, only in the north. Anyways, those two are looking not so nice anymore. There's no more bubbles. What does that mean? Possibly all the food has been depleted. And now it's already very, very sour. And too sour is something that your sourdough starter also doesn't like. Especially the yeast. They don't like it and they are not able to reproduce anymore. So bubbles together with the scent, that's a good sign to look out for when you want to judge how active your sourdough starter is. But still, this is not going to be a problem. The only thing that changes is that now my fermentation is going to take a little bit longer with the actual main dough. Enough talking, let's make the dough.
So I could be using either this one or this one, but I'm going to be using this one because this was my point of this video, to show you that a higher hydration starter can be built much faster than a one that's at a lower hydration. I'm just going to give this a good stir. Very, very liquidy. So how much of this that I use, it doesn't really matter. Based on the amount of sourdough starter, you are just changing the speed at which your dough ferments. One thing to consider though is that this sourdough starter has already broken down quite a lot, so you don't want to be using too much of this. If I had given my sourdough starter another feeding, I'll be talking about this later, then that's a different story. But this flour has fermented for so much time, so you shouldn't be using too much of this, or else it might have negative effects on your dough. I'll be sharing all the details of the dough in the description so that you can check this out, because this is gonna make an amazing bread for you. The recipe that I'll be linking right here also explains the why and how you should do things nicely. So let's bake our first bread using our just made sourdough starter, which we never fed in between, something I think nobody has done before. Voila, the bread! And it turned out so much better than I expected. I'm very curious to give this a shot and see how it actually tastes. I really didn't expect that this would work. But to double check that it's not under fermented or over fermented, which is always a big thing for sourdough bread, we need to let this cool down and then slice it open to check the crumb. Beautiful loaf. The crumb is a little bit wild. Look at this. This could either have been me during shaping or that I did not use enough steam. Yeah, but I would say looking at this nice airy crumb structure, please ignore this one. This is not here, you don't see it. Other than that, I think this bread is looking great. Yum, 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 yum. Great crust, great fluffiness. This to me is nice. The perfect sourdough. And just look at those bubbles popping here from my sourdough starter. A little bit like sparkling water. So from time to time you have to give your sourdough starter additional food. You have to feed your microorganisms. Typically what you want to do is before you bake a bread, you want to feed your sourdough starter at least once. This makes sure that you have a healthy balance between not fermenting too fast and not fermenting too slow. That's why you want to refresh your sourdough starter. If you don't use your sourdough starter, you can just move it to your fridge. I'd recommend you to give at least one feeding after you take it out of the fridge as well. If you're out of town, if you're out for a few months, damn, that's hard to pronounce, month. Anyways, then you can dry your sourdough starter. I'm going to be linking a video right here. To refresh it, I'm just gonna be removing some of it, placing just a little bit of this in my sourdough starter surplus jar. And then all I do is I put some water. I don't even weigh it anymore. I'm so lazy. And then I feed it with a mixture of bread flour and whole wheat flour. See, no weighing, just stirring. And this is making an amazing and super active sourdough starter. Hydration is probably around 300% or so now. And by the way, stirring it just makes sure that there's more oxygen available. And that's what your sourdough needs to really come to life. Now, if you already have a sourdough, then this probably sounds like complete magic to you. And that was my goal of this video. I just wanted to show you a different approach. And I've been using this approach for a while now and I kind of like it. Feeding is easier and I feel it makes for a more active sourdough starter. I would be very curious to hear your thoughts on this approach. What do you think are the pros? What do you think are the cons? Are you gonna try it or are you gonna stick to that old starter method? Please do drop a comment in the comment section and let's have a great discussion. If you're new to sourdough baking, I definitely recommend you to check out my full recipe, which covers making sourdough bread from start to finish. It's a little bit older, so it doesn't include the new sourdough technique that I've shown in this video. But still, it's a great recipe that will make you amazing bread every time. Please do check that out because it's not just a recipe. It explains the why in each step. This way you can follow the recipe at home. Generally, I don't like to give recipes. I prefer to give you a framework, a set of tools that you can use to reproduce the recipe at home. This makes it very easy because flour is different, temperature is different. There are so many parameters, all of them being equally important, and you need to know how they play together. This is especially important when baking sourdough bread. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. I hope you had fun. I hope you learned something new. And as always, may the gluten be with you. By the way, secret scene for everybody who managed to watch this video till the end. Congratulations. I wanted to show you that size doesn't matter. Size increase doesn't matter. To make that epic time lapse, which I showed at the start of the video, I would just develop a lot of dough strength for my sourdough starter. Some people claim their starter triples, quadruples, 5-duples, I have no idea in size, but really it doesn't matter. The harder you stir your sourdough starter, the more it's going to increase in size because you have developed a better gluten network. So yeah, just some cool random knowledge at the end. Bye!